What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of the LivBtr podcast. I'm your host, Timm Chiusano, founder of Sabre Advisors. Today's guest is Timm Chiusano, a former creative executive for a Fortune 100 company turned content creator. Timm's relatability has amassed him over 1 million followers on TikTok, and Timm and I have a lot of things in common, from sneakers to tattoos to running. And I know you guys are going to get a lot out of this episode with my man, Timm Chiusano.
I just want to have peace. Pay for the bill, let them take my card, never see the receipt. Good health, we prize, but everybody around prosperity.
What's up, guys, and welcome to the LivBtr podcast. This is your host, Timm Chiusano, and this is the show for people trying to optimize every area of their life. Let's go.
I just want to have peace.
Timm Chiusano, welcome to the LivBtr podcast, my friend.
What an absolute pleasure to be here. This is a continuation of a delicious but, very odd meal in which you were incredibly kind to make me feel as though I had a friend at the table. And I say that with total sincerity because it was overwhelming for a handful of reasons. And so I'm just kind of fumbling around through small talk and all that kind of good stuff, and it was a treat to be able to be next to you and have you kind of lean in a little bit, make me feel a bit more comfortable. So thank you, and thank you for having me today.
Amazing. Like it's so interesting to me. I appreciate those kind words. They landed, and I feel the same way. And it's so funny to get your perspective on that dinner, because it's like, I'm sure we're similar in a lot of ways, and that's why I really wanted to get to know you more, and then going down the rabbit hole that is Timm Chiusano's content. First off, you're an evil genius, and
I'll take that.
It's so, being a little bit of a creator myself, the glimpse into your brain and how you tie everything together is literally genius. So it's not surprising that you're very successful.
Well, I appreciate the kind words. You're talking to a dude that uses iMovie to edit, and maybe that's part of the evil genius and just how I squeeze this stuff out of my head. But it's a combination of old, weird Woody Allen movies from the late 1970s that I got exposed to way too early as a kid, because my mom just had that personality and that old hippie mentality and was like, here's some stuff to digest. And way too many music videos in the 90s, watching MTV over and over and over again, throw in a little bit of a corporate job, Modern Family life, and give me a little bit of time to do something that genuinely feels like it's good for my soul. It's almost like my mental vitamins to make a piece of content on a consistent basis. And that's basically what my feed had been for the past 4 years.
So walk me through. Let's start early life. You mentioned mom.
Yeah.
I want to understand exactly how you got here.
Cool.
And we only have 45 minutes to do that, so I don't want to harp on every detail, but I do want to understand you. Where'd you grow up, and tell us a little bit about your life.
I can give you the elevator pitch, which would be mom that was an old hippie, an artist, former airline stewardess for TWA, so she had all of the stories. My dad worked in radio for most of his career, had a very successful run as a general sales manager, moved on to, higher levels at CBS and Infinity Broadcasting. So it was the perfect mix of corporate and art at home.
That's rare. It's a rare combo.
I realized more and more what an advantage that gave me to have both sides of my brain firing on those types of cylinders on a consistent basis, especially because neither of my parents would say that they were great students or that they were academics, but yet they were successful in their own regard. And they just instilled a lot of skills and the type of mindset that I think you need or is helpful to just give you perspective to be able to be cool with having to work your ass off on a consistent basis. Maybe because you don't have as much of a education background, or maybe just because of the family environment that you're raised in. But the art and science, so to speak, was a wonderful blend. Grew up around here, played a lot of hockey as a kid, started working at a very early age carrying bags as a caddy when I was, I want to say like 12 or 13 probably. Had my first job at an illegal age because I think that there's like a state minimum requirement for like when you can actually get a proper job and the paperwork and taxes and that kind of stuff. But I want to say I started like around 13 or 14 working at a driving range and always...
Me too, by the way. That's
strange. Cool. Driving range?
Yeah.
It's
so
you know,
strange.
it makes sense though, right? Like you have to be meticulous and detail oriented because you can't have somebody go try to cut the lawn. At least it was a real grass range where I was.
Yeah.
And they can't go and cut the grass if there's still balls out there because it destroys the mowers, like let alone just the need to have all the balls in so that you can turn them around quicker.
So did you drive the thing that collects the balls?
Drove the picker.
So did I.
Yeah.
That's so weird.
Did you have bags or did you have like baskets? What was the ball delivery mechanism?
It was baskets, and it wasn't, a high tech driving range by any means. And
this is way before the Top Golf.
Yeah, it was the community driving range at a local like park.
Yeah.
But it's just funny because we would, my buddy and I would have so much fun, and like we would I'd be driving the thing, getting hit with balls.
Yep.
People would always aim at you.
Yep.
Obviously, it's just funny. I haven't thought about that in a very long time.
Did you ever have one go through the cage?
I have.
Yeah.
I have. Yeah. I didn't get hit, but I have had them come
I
through.
once got hit and it lodged itself in between the seat and my thigh.
No way.
I haven't thought about this until this conversation came up. And I remember I thought I got stung by a bee at first, and I looked down and it was just stuck there. And I had dimples on the inside of my thigh for a good week after that. It like somehow squeaked right into the perfect slot.
That's crazy.
And yeah, but super fun job to have as a kid.
Yeah, that was super fun.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Did that, played a lot of hockey, dreamed of going to Canada and playing in the junior leagues for some reason. Just that felt like a different path to go. I ended up doing that in part because I didn't get good grades in high school, and going for a postgraduate year of high school was a better route than just what my options were at the time, which was a SUNY school or something local, which just didn't, I was like, if I go that route, it's not going to end up good for me. Like, I'm just going to fall over at some point. Like, I just saw myself becoming one of those people that ends up drinking too much and doing,
I was one
making
of those
mistakes.
people.
I mean, I certainly still have my stories, and it kind of ended up going in that direction anyway.
Yeah.
But at least when I was 17 and was like, okay, what do I do here? I found a school in Canada. Most of my friends, especially because I grew up around here, most of my friends were like, what in God? Like, you're going to Port Hope, Ontario? That makes no sense whatsoever. Went, loved it, had an amazing time, completely changed the trajectory of my life just based around the kids that I was surrounded by at that time, how that academic rigor was completely different than public school in the New York City area.
Sure. And
it just instilled a whole different set of, not different, but the values were slightly different enough from a Canadian perspective that it felt like a bit more of a humble polish, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
Canadians are always, said that they're way too nice, and a lot of those things ring true.
Yeah.
And so it was a good environment to be around. But still didn't get good grades, ended up at a different kind of school up there in a province called New Brunswick. And my first semester was just a total train wreck where I was like eating KFC family meals by myself and drinking SoCo and Tang, and it was just like a mess.
SoCo and Tang,
yeah,
that's creative too.
It was creative. It was absolutely disgusting, but it was creative.
Yeah.
And it felt like
the trick.
Did the trick. It lasted one semester, and then I found my way into the back door of Canada's best university. They had this program where it was a visiting student program. You could go and take classes, but you didn't get credit for it unless you completed 3 years and got like a certain GPA. I was like, I don't care. I get in the door, be able to go. All my friends were there from the previous experience that I had in Canada, so I'm like, whatever I can do to get in the door, I'll take it. Didn't graduate. My dad got sick. He had stage 4 melanoma when I was 20 or 21 years old.
Oh, wow.
He survived. He was one of 85 people to survive an experimental chemotherapy concoction back in 99, I believe it was. And when I went back to school, especially because I had this like visitor's pass, it kind of started the clock over again relative to what that visitor's pass would look like. And all my friends graduated that year once I got back. I'm like, I'm not going to stay in Kingston, Ontario by myself and do this for this degree. Let me go home and just see if I can get a job quickly, and then maybe everybody will forget to ask if I have a degree. And it kind of worked out that way, but just took whatever small-ish job I could get my hands on to get myself into sports production. I didn't know what I really wanted other than sports sounds cool, marketing sounds cool, and I have no degree. So I just started working all these different little odd jobs to try to get experience and to try to make connections. Took about 2+ years until I got that first real, okay, the door is now open. And it was because I just kept accruing all of this experience, especially in the live sports production world. Got my foot in the door with ABC Sports back in 2000. That must have been 3 or 4. 2003. Spent 5 years in live sports production. Loved it. Did everything from booking hotel rooms and rental cars for talent and all the stuff that goes into just getting the crew, ready on a week-to-week basis, to graphics and some teases and some actual producing and some, directing to a certain extent. Then I met my wife in Las Vegas, and within 7 months, we got married from first date to wedding day.
What year was that?
That was 2004. We met in October of 2004, got married in April of 2005.
Okay.
I then had a panic attack that traveling 36 weeks a year for live sports production was amazing, but not going to be great for married life, and started to figure out, how the hell do I get a desk job? I started to look for where there were business things coming into the live sports production world, which were your sponsorships, your starting lineup brought to you by, shot of the day, all of those integrated brand campaigns that production didn't, when you're watching the game at home, you're just used to it now. But if you're in the truck producing it, you're like, I don't want to step away for this sales piece. So I pitched myself as an in-house diplomat. I'm like, I don't know marketing, but if you teach me marketing, I can teach you live sports production. And then we can have a better conversation about what the ideas are for the sponsors and also not piss off the production team as we're going through this, because that's what I was seeing on the other side. And the folks at ESPN bought the argument, got a job within, took a couple of years to find that back door, make those relationships, make that argument that I just, try to explain relatively quickly. Interview process, etc. Got the job, spent 7 years at ESPN doing marketing and sales. And then I got this call for Time Warner Cable Media before it was acquired and now is Spectrum, as most people know it. And was asked to go in and take a 100-person department, fire everybody, start it back up from scratch with the purpose of making commercials for small businesses at scale. That was 20,000 commercials on an annual basis, and for everything from the local restaurant around the corner to the local auto dealership, and from everywhere from Los Angeles to small town Maine and in between.
So what year was that you started in that position?
2013. 2019 rolls around, TikTok comes out. And I heard Gary Vaynerchuk talking about it a lot, just relative to your own personal brand and experimenting, all that kind of good stuff. But because I had this job of overseeing what was then had become a 240-person team, doing all of that scale and volume for local commercial production, my need to understand the platform, or at least technology, relative to how can you go from capturing content to editing it to getting it somewhere live in a short period of time, that was mission critical as far as running this department well, and also making sure that the people on my team had the right technology, but that also I was as much of a thought leader as possible so that I could protect them too.
Right.
Because in a massive matrix organization, it's very easy for somebody to come in and be like, hey, this technology looks cool. Do you really need those 240 people now to do that thing?
Right.
And so I was very paranoid for the right reasons, which helped drive me towards those types of explorations. I think my brain would have gravitated there anyway, but there were just multiple reasons why learning TikTok as much as I could, as early as I could, made a ton of sense.
You were future-proofing.
I was exactly.
Sure, yeah.
Future-proofing the department, investing a little bit in myself too, just to understand it based off of what I was hearing Gary talk about. And because it was the department that I described, I kept the lights on.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm not, when you've got 20,000 projects and 5,000 plus clients, you're not really touching a lot of the day-to-day work. It's P&L management, it's process management, it's managing up, it is all of those things. And
you're running the business.
Right. It could have been a cardboard box making factory
Right.
at the end of the day.
Right.
It just happened to be in a space that I felt passionate about and loved taking the big brand stuff that I learned at ESPN and applying it there. And this also allowed me, this being TikTok and understanding it better, allowed me to have an opportunity to scratch my own creative itch, going back to live sports production and doing some of those elements, plus, early childhood exposure to weird Woody Allen movies and Cheech and Chong and way too many, music videos in the 90s on MTV. Huge fan of Wes Anderson. You roll all of that together, plus the business need of understanding quick turnaround production for low cost, put TikTok in my hands and I start making them. I'm like, wow, this is super fun to do. Plus nobody knows me here. Right. Like I started to experiment on Instagram around 2012-ish with just these random protein bar reviews. I'd set up a camera in my office and I would sit there and it would take me like literally 60 seconds. Set it up, sit back, crack open a protein bar and just have this really weird conversation with myself. Not expecting anybody to watch it or to care about it. And it was cathartic. It was like a step away from the HR meeting or the
monotony,
the grind of corporate relative to things that are more scientific and calculated versus just fun and whimsical. But I got some blowback from that where people were like, wait a minute, at the time I was 40, I think. You should be posting pictures of your family and your vacations. Like, what? Why are you doing protein bar reviews and putting it out?
Actually, that's Facebook.
I didn't know anybody. I was just I was like, okay, fine. Like, I was very easy to get small back then, which made TikTok a safe space because it's literally when you start at zero and you don't care at all, it's like, I can do whatever and it doesn't matter. Like, I've got nothing to lose here. So I just experimented for a while. Then it starts to get a little out of control. But because there was so much happening concurrently, it really does feel like I blinked and I went from, oh, let me check this out to, good God, what's going on? And am I really about to leave my corporate job? And can I wrap my head around this? And honestly, I don't know that I have
and get a book
yet.
Deal
and all of those things that just seem like
dinners.
And be it weird dinners where I'm like, this is absolutely delicious. I don't know anybody. It feels super fancy, but everybody's cool. I'm not quite sure what to think. And then you get invited to sit down and have a lovely conversation like this.
There's so much to unpack. All right, good. We have plenty of time. So instead of backing up, I was going to back up quite a bit out of my own personal interest because I've had melanomas and then I lost my mother to cancer in my early 20s. So I'm happy to hear that you didn't experience that.
Yeah.
Happy to hear that mom and dad are both healthy.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I just lost my dad too, unfortunately.
Sorry, man.
So the content creation process for you, that's what I'm most interested in understanding and how it started. Forget the protein reviews on Instagram.
Yeah.
Like that was obviously just kind of like you'd record it and you'd put it out and that was like 60 seconds worth of your time.
Yep.
What you're doing right now is clearly more than 60 seconds worth of your time. And I'm just curious, walk me through how you capture your videos and piece it together. Is there a storyboard? Is there just walk us through that.
It is literally just walking around the city, living my day-to-day life. And especially I'm in a transitional period now, so I'll explain it as it existed when I was working my corporate job.
Yeah.
It was just start capturing footage that feels right and feels interesting and feels like what I want to show and how it might be helpful. Do that all day long, but be cognizant of the fact that you're going to have to edit that the next morning. So a couple seconds here and there the world is your tripod when you look at it the right way. So it was just very much run and gun. And then I would airdrop it to my laptop either on my commute home or that night, hopefully get a rough cut, which would be taking anywhere from 16 to, if I made some mistakes, probably up to 30 minutes of footage, get that down to 90 seconds.
No audio yet. You're
no
just
audio
piecing
yet.
Together the video.
And just in chronological order from 4:02 a.m. until whenever I go to bed.
Even if it's not like perfect in your mind, the sequence,
Correct.
just chronological.
Yeah.
That's the only way to get it organized fast, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Then the next morning, after I would get up and make sure that my work email was caught up on and anything for the day was well prepared, then I would go back to that timeline and I would try to pick a spot of like, where's the most interesting entry point? And then I would make up the voiceover off the top of my head. And I do all of this in iMovie, which most people get a kick out of it when you know, or because most people are like, oh, okay, that sounds funny just because iMovie is very rudimentary.
Sure.
But if you've ever used iMovie on a desktop, you know that it doesn't take 9:16 as a native format. So I have to import it and then rotate it. And so I've made 2,000 TikToks with my head tilted like this.
Oh, God.
Because that's the way to do it. And then export it, flip it back on its side, airdrop it back to my phone, put a piece of music on it, and go out there. And most days I would sit there and I'd be like, okay, cool. And I'd go through it and I'd make up the voiceover. And sometimes I'd get stuck. I'd like paint yourself in a corner and then you're like, I'm running out of time. I just got to figure this out and get out the door. And then by the time it would come to post, because for some reason I would usually hold on to it until 5 o'clock. I don't know if that's a good practice or not. Sure. That just was the routine that I had. It would come, to 5 o'clock, and so much would have happened between that 12 hours between when I finished it. And I'm like, I don't remember what this was. I don't remember if it's any good. I don't know if it's timely. I don't know if it's going to potentially fly in the face of a current event that happened that day. But I would put it up and I would keep capturing for the rest of that day and just try to rinse and repeat as much as possible.
So it really was more of like a mini vlog.
Totally. Totally. With like a modest amount of, I guess, insight brought in from comments and notes that I would get. Because at first it was, let me just try some stuff, see how I can piece it together. I did a little bit of protein bar reviews in the early stages as well, just to get something out the door. And I never expected for the audience to welcome in somebody in their early 40s, especially a white dude in a suit in their early 40s working a corporate job. I thought was like paint dry potentially for that audience. And then I started to see some notes where people were like, oh, I came because I noticed your sneaker collection, but I stuck around for the wisdom. Or the one comment that I started to see most often was something to the extent of, you make getting older less scary.
Wow.
And I was like, that's dope. I never would have fathomed that ever.
Yeah.
And it was like,
I think that we have that in common.
Totally.
Like it's funny because and what's interesting, you have a very distinct personality and like the way that you tell the story is everything. I mean that's the secret sauce right there. And your voice is very calming, so it's like all the things combined are really enjoyable and easy to digest. So for me it's not surprising, but I'm just curious again like how you kind of got into that flow. But it's like you're creating this little sitcom, basically. Like it has, and the characters are in it, and the family's in it, and the in-laws are in it.
Yeah,
it's brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was really about how I could bring the world around me to life, and it's a huge reason why I leaned into you, right? So for the most part, I will say, POV, you're a 46-year-old dad doing blah, blah. But I intentionally would go towards you, or all of a sudden it just hit me that was way more comfortable to do it because I was allowing the viewer to hopefully see that anything that I could do that they could do as well.
Yeah.
And then it felt a little much. I wasn't comfortable as much as I could say by 9 a.m. was with the head of finance, and then at 10 o'clock I had a presentation to the president, and I still throw those things in. But I think it resonated differently when I said that you did these things. And that's why I leaned into the POV narrative. Was I want you to have an understanding that, especially with corporate being as scary of a place that it is nowadays for younger generations especially, how can I make you more comfortable with the characters you're going to come across, the circumstances you're going to face, the type of meetings you could have, and almost passively build confidence that that's all doable, especially as a guy without a college degree who never intended to get into the corporate space to this extent, and figured it out relatively well, and also found that my superpower throughout that was just modest self-awareness, and how could I then empower others through that lens as well. So I appreciate the kind words about the storytelling in the world, because it was really intended to make sure that the beauty that I would see in just the random day-to-day things would come across, and that there is something amazing about walking into the kitchen and your mother-in-law is making a cake with your daughter, and it's not because of like how the aesthetics are perfect, right? It's because the aesthetics are real.
Right.
So how could I bring that to life?
Right.
And that was fun, but it's also this weird balance of, can I get the people in my world to be comfortable with that too?
Yeah.
Where they see me pull out my phone at 5:45 in the morning, and I try to do it like quietly, because I don't want them to think like, oh, I'm just always in this like, oh, let me get this. No, but there's these beautiful moments that if you're going to capture it organically, you have to kind of like quietly just like set it up in the corner and walk away from it, and get people to be okay with like, my hair's not great, or I look tired, or blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And so I try to be very self-deprecating in that regard as well, where it's like, I will put the camera on myself as soon as and it's funny too, because I'm still not comfortable talking directly to the camera, but like trying to find these ways to just make people more comfortable watching my world, make people see what I saw with as much like pleasantry behind it as I see it, and hopefully make the people in my world shine too.
Yeah.
Because that's the fun part. I don't exist. I don't have this perspective unless it's for the people in my world. So how do I give them an opportunity to be the stars as much as possible?
So how has your wife reacted to all of it? Were there any points where it was like, what are you doing? Like, and why is this taking up so much time? Because it is very time consuming, and you have a job, and all the things. I'm asking out of my own curiosity, because I have my own answers to those questions.
Yeah.
And it's, at your level now, at least like you're really a amazing creator. Nobody could say otherwise. So at least you have that, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, this is really like, gaining traction. This is amazing. Well, look at all the things that I get to do now.
Yeah.
Get to eat dinner next to a dude with a red beard.
It's funny because she was so for it from the jump.
Yeah.
Where she was just a fan. Like, she would come home some days and be like, why didn't you post anything today?
Really?
Yeah. And
that's cool.
It was amazing, especially in the early days when I would get frustrated and be like, this is like the 12th, 13th straight month of doing this almost every day. This is so rough. Goofy.
But it's rough. Like, that's not easy to do with all your other responsibilities.
Totally. So then to have a wife that's not only not being like, hey, what's up with the time and what's up with the weirdness and why is our life in front of the world, blah, 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 that she'd be like, you can do it. Go back in the other room, sit back down, give yourself 15 minutes. You'll be okay. You'll figure it out. That's nuts.
That's
like,
awesome.
And all of the things that would happen along the way too. The book deal was because I went to her and said, hey, I got invited by this female creator who was in her mid-20s, invited me on her podcast. Like, just want to make sure you're okay with it. You should check out her content. Just make sure, like, because, just the things that I think were smart to put on the table ahead of time versus like, oh, hey, I did this thing, or here's like this collaboration that I did with this random stranger on the internet, especially if it's a younger female.
Totally.
So I say, hey, got invited to this podcast. I go on the podcast. Brilliant author who had a book that was just about to come out. I come home. I'm like, babe, I think this might sound weird, but I really want to invite her and her boyfriend over for dinner. And depending on what age the listener might be who's listening to this conversation now, in your 40s, like that can be a bit of an awkward conversation at home of like, hey, there's strangers from the internet that I want to invite into our house. And at this point, I'd already had a handful of strangers from the internet over to our house. So it's kind of like, let me go back to the well again for another favor from the missus.
Sure.
Because I wanted to learn more about, I had no idea how the book process worked. Do you need an agent? Do you just start writing? Do you go publish by yourself on Amazon? Like, what's the best path? And the fact that Kelly, my wife, was so encouraging throughout to want to see my content first and foremost, encouraged me when I was down that I could do it and that I was good at it when I felt like I was terrible at it, encouraged me to go have any conversation with anybody at any time if I felt like it was in my best interest and our best interest as a family, and also to be open to having our home a welcome place for creators regardless of age, where they were from, what kind of stuff they did, and that she would just trust me inherently with that is nuts. So I give her all the credit in the world for giving any of this a shot from the get-go, because otherwise, to your point, it could easily get into the second month of an experiment like this, and it's like, come on, we got 1,000 other things going on. Like, what are we doing?
Especially if the other person's not a creator,
right?
Like they don't necessarily always understand, the things that go into it and the time and the mental preparation and exhaustion really of doing the things that you're doing. So you're blessed. That's amazing.
She spent her early career. I mean, we met in Vegas because we were both working for ABC Sports at the time. So she had a little bit of the sports production background, and her first two jobs here in New York City were graveyard shift at CBS News, local news, and then morning shift for Fox 5, Good Day New York. So that helped as well because she knew enough about the production process overall,
right,
and the storytelling and what it means to be able to get the right person to have the right conversation at the right time. She was literally booking off to, give her credit here. This is a fun, like, pop culture element to put on the table. She was the first person to book Lady Gaga for a TV spot.
Wow.
Yeah, back when this had to have been 2000.
Is it Stephanie Germanato?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think she was just Lady Gaga at the time.
I've worked with her dad on a restaurant deal, actually. Yeah,
I've heard he knows what he's doing in that space.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, for sure.
But I think her background in that space helped a little bit. But
that's cool.
At the same time, too, I mean, some days I'm like, I can't understand why he supported me and still do so much, because otherwise none of this would have happened.
Well, she's obviously pretty cool from what I see. The little incredible. That I see, she's obviously pretty cool.
Incredible.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's and I want to know about the tattoos. I want to change gears first.
All right.
So when did you start getting ink?
I got my first one when I was 18.
Me too.
When it was illegal, right?
Me too,
Did you get yours in the city?
No, I got it in Tucson, Arizona.
Okay.
Actually, I was 17. I just got to college. My parents visited. My dad visited shortly after I got there, and we got our first tattoos together. He never had one. We got our first
with
together.
Your dad?
Yeah.
No way. Which one is it?
Very cool. It's actually. It was a sun armband.
Okay. Yep.
With a J in the middle for J-Sun.
Yeah.
And it is now peeking out of the bottom of this guardian angel.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's there enough for me to like know that it's like, but the
you can see the back of the band
like up here.
Totally.
So it's pretty cool to actually be able to say that I got that, my first tattoo.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Dad.
Yeah, no, my dad was not
a
fan.
Not into that.
No, still not a fan.
Yeah.
He's gotten more comfortable with it, especially as things have progressed, and it's actually become a bit of I think it helped in the broader conversation at social. It was like, corporate guy, but with tattoos. Let me lean in a little bit, especially for the younger generations.
Was it ever in your mind, like early corporate, showing that you were tattooed? That was always a struggle for me.
Yeah, it was. It totally was. And I think most of mine, because I didn't get most of mine until my mid-30s.
Yeah.
It's almost like I got to a point where I was making enough money that I could invest the right way into it and like go to places that I knew were totally top notch, took months in advance to book time. I would build PowerPoint presentations for the artist in advance to be like, I would take a picture of my arm and I'd be like, here's the space. Here's what I want. And knowing how much time goes into the process at the front of it, right? Sometimes you show up at the shop, there's a bit of back and forth. How about this? Let me draw it out. Next thing you know, it's like an hour and a half before they're even putting the piece of paper on you to do the outline. Based off of how hectic my life was, this is going back to like 2016 or so, I need to get in and out.
Let's expedite this process so we can get the gun going.
Yeah, so can I get you to a place where you're like, you already have the size and you know exactly where it's going to go, so you can walk in and be like, boom, how does this look? Cool, maybe adjust it a centimeter, let's get going. And it was almost like my quiet, especially because back then there was almost no social media presence outside of just Instagram for the sake of friends and family. Never really used Facebook for that capacity. MySpace I was aware of, but like, you know, I loved Twitter for a minute, especially when it first started going, you know, whenever that was in 2008 or 9. But otherwise I'd never thought of it as a vessel to share broadly. It was just like, here's like that easier way to not send out something paper in the mail, right? It's literally like Instagram. And so I looked at it that way. So when I was getting tattoos, it was more for my own, this is my like quiet rebellion against getting sucked deeper and deeper into the corporate world. I struggled with it. I had friends that were like, dude, you're becoming like a corporate monster, because I was, you know, letting entire departments go and having to build them back from scratch and having to become, you know, a mastermind at P&L management, because, you know, cable companies get you know, a hard time in a lot of regards, but there's a reason why Charter Communications is a Fortune 7 company, and they don't fuck around when it comes to a lot of like the nuts and bolts of all of the things in the corporate space. So that meant if you were given the responsibility of running a large department at a company like that, like, you better have your shit together. So I got really good at all of just the nuts and bolts of the P&L management, the process, the job descriptions, like all of it. And through that, I struggled a little bit. And
tattoos were the outlet.
And a little bit, I was like, okay, now I've got some disposable income. I can be smart and efficient about how I use that time to go get this, because it just feels right to me. And between that and then being able to actually like repopulate my sneaker collection 30 years after I was, you know, didn't jettison it, but didn't have the disposable income for a long time until I could be like, cool, like, let's build a collection again. And did so quietly, like wouldn't come back into the office the next day and be like, hey, check out what I got. I would come in the full suit and tie, and I would have like the paper towel underneath the shirt loosely taped on, and in between meetings run to the bathroom, go in the stall, take off my shirt, see how it was, put a little more whatever on it, cover it back up.
It's so different now.
With the Tegaderm and like, oh my God, it's incredible. It smells terrible once you peel it off, but it's great. But like, you know, that phase before that, and so I'd have all of these dress shirts that would get ruined because they would get like a huge oil stain on it from, you know, whatever I was using to help protect it. But
a little blood too.
Exactly. Yep. But it's been a handful of years now since I got one, but it felt like my own coat of armor, so to speak, and felt like I kind of connected myself back to my younger self in a weird way. And
do you find yourself doing that more and more in your 40s, connecting yourself on some level to your younger self?
It's fun.
And how does that translate to fatherhood for you and you know, with your children?
Wow, that's a brilliant part two to that question. The first part, I would say, it like, unintentionally, I feel like I'm literally been dragged back into my 20s. I turn 47 tomorrow. Amazing. And I feel like I'm back at 27 because I don't have a real job. I'm doing mostly creative expression as like an outlet. I'm able to dress, and especially because of the cycle of fashion, there's a lot of stuff from when I was 27 that's now, you know, the nuances of like bigger cut pants and certain brands that have went away for the last 15 years and that are back all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And this connection to all of these different places that I never would have expected to pop back up again. So unintentionally on that side, as a parent, it's more of like this grounding like resonance. I'd be curious what you think of this, where at least for my daughter, now that she's getting into middle school, I'm starting to connect the dots to the most important people in my life that I've known since that era.
Yeah.
And the people that I literally still have text message exchanges with that go all the way back then. And some of the things that I really remember, some of the things that I regret, some of the things that were like horrific moments for me back in the day, and to have that a bit more tangible in my head, it makes me, I think it makes me more sturdy as a parent and appreciative of what's going on inside her head.
Yeah.
And also allows me to embrace this newfound like rebirth of my 20s and being at home and helping out with homework, and how special that is from a slightly different lens as a parent, I think. But I don't know. Does that make sense?
I mean, it's very much, I feel like what I'm going through, by the way, my older son's birthday is tomorrow. You guys share a birthday.
Amazing.
That's amazing. And, they randomly came home a couple of weeks ago and were like, my older son was like, Dad, can we go to the skateboard shop? I wanted to, I'm like, absolutely, let's go, And I mean, I was a big skateboarder, then a big snowboarder, like really heavy into snowboarding. And so the fact that if they're asking me if it's okay to get back into things that I really enjoyed, in my early years, it makes me feel young, and then I get so happy that I'm able to share that and help them with that experience. Because it's the opposite. My dad had no interest and wasn't really around. He worked 6 days a week, so on and so forth. So it seems really cool to be able to and be at a place in my life that I could, kind of find the time to do what I want to do and get my work done when I need to get my work done, so to speak. Very similar. Yeah. I had a corporate background for a good amount of years, and on being an entrepreneur it's a gift and a curse for sure, but the freedom is awesome. But yeah, I think the best thing on the planet is being a dad.
Oh, yeah. It's the most important job that we could potentially have. Yeah. It's such a gift to be able to almost relive everything all over again. Yeah. At least to a large extent in regards to just the pure joy when they're in their early years and they just are still figuring out everything, literally from the five senses to what to be scared of, what not to be scared of, and just those things wow, they just figured out that they had a shadow. That was the craziest thing to witness, right? Some of those things, how incredible to watch life happen that way. Yeah. Things that probably, maybe it's because of the generations that we both saw, both as parents and now that we're seeing as kids, but I think also because of just how much more there is out there for us to be exposed to relative to, content in general, and that could be traditional movies or TV, or that could be social media, that we're able to have this perspective where we can truly appreciate those nuances of raising a child. Yeah. Almost from this surreal perspective versus here's my duty to do this thing, and you can't enjoy it as much because you haven't been exposed to as many other people as enjoying it as much, right? There's some content out there that can actually make you be like, I hadn't thought about that as a parent, or wow, that's a really neat trick. And I think that can be an advantage as much, as there is to say about social media in general and the pitfalls of it, etc. There are ways that it can help either inspire or remind you about those things that you should not take for granted. And it can make the whole experience hit a bit differently and, put you in a position where you can then enjoy those moments where they want to be exposed to something that was part of your youth, or they, want to fall into a passion that you had. And also understand that that's really special. Some people just don't have the relationship, period, let alone have it tie back to something that they themselves were genuinely interested in.
So I would have asked this question a lot earlier in the podcast, but we're coming to a close, and I'm very curious. This is the LivBtr podcast, right? And there had to be a moment in your life, like a pivotal moment where you were being challenged on some level. Is there a specific time? What would be your biggest challenge, would you say, that you've had in your life? And how did you overcome that challenge?
Oh, man, it's tough to pick like which level and what would be most useful for the audience. I think I'll do two real quick. One was the first time, because both my parents have been through combined, I think it's 10 or 11 bouts of cancer.
Wow.
And so to see them consistently go through that off and on over the past now 20 plus years, and how resilient they have been, especially my mom. Her last bout was had significant ramifications relative to quality of life on a day-to-day basis. And she left notes around the house for herself during recovery when she was home alone, mostly by preference, that would say things like, you're doing, literally handwritten notes taped up on walls that say things like, you're doing so much better today. Think of how much better you are today than you were yesterday. You look amazing. Like literally, and I was like, we go through things now and we have setbacks, we have injuries from we sit in ice baths, we do these things to try to help ourselves feel better. And so to think of the resilience 30 plus years from where we are now, to be like, no, I'm going to continue to fight to just have the opportunity to enjoy things. So seeing that would be one, and just that reminder that nothing should be taken for granted and that you should give yourself what you need pep talk wise, and it's okay, and in fact it should be encouraged to be able to tell yourself, look at how good you're doing today. Think how much better you're doing, and like progress over perfection, all that kind of good stuff. And the second quick one would be, when you come across bullies at work, your ability to stay calm, and I had this ongoing for a number of years, your ability to stay calm if you really want to fight for what you feel is the right thing to fight for, in a quiet way that doesn't combat bullying with bullying, but you can survive through that, but your calm is going to be your superpower going through that, and it might mean carrying the weight of other people as well. But if for some reason you feel like you're on that kind of mission, just keep going. You're going to be fine. You will not lose on the high road, and as many times you feel like you're being asked to eat a crap sandwich, you're going to figure out ways to get it done and to have the other person be like, wow, I just got outpaced there. And kindness and calm does win.
I love it. What is on the horizon for you? When does the book come out? What's next?
Book is still got about a year.
Okay. I want to talk more about that offline.
All right, cool. Yeah. Full manuscript is being submitted by Monday.
Amazing.
I'm like maybe 5,000 words away from being done at this point, which is peanuts when it comes to like a full book. And really, right now I'm in the muck, man. Like I'm trying to figure out, what does the new world of content look like for me? I'm a solo artist in the space, right? I've got one editor that helps me with YouTube stuff, and I've got people that help me with brand deals. But like, as far as shooting, ideating, podcasting, it's all done by myself. I'll edit my own podcast using iMovie just because that's what I know best, and just simply export as an audio file.
iMovie commercial.
Yeah, they should give me a cut, or they should let me help them upgrade it because it needs some upgrading. I'm in that fun part that's so daunting too, where it's like I have a million things to say, but what's the best way to say it? Like, what's that syllabus? I feel like I've got 20 years of corporate experience that can be paid forward in so many different ways, but what is the best way to package it, especially knowing that there's an audience that is there for it? And in my head, I see this Mr. Rogers meets corporate America tutorial type of content that I just need to keep chipping away at, plus reinventing how my day is time block. I mean, I changed the people that I was around, the food that I was eating, the clothes that I was wearing. All of that fell off a cliff 85 days ago. And then the summer happened, which was a lot of family stuff and a lot of house guests and a lot of travel things and keeping your kids preoccupied and like all that stuff. And this is maybe week 2 now that school started again. Yeah. So short term, it is being okay with fumbling around and just giving myself the headspace to try to figure out what's next and to embrace the fact that this is a unique space to be in, and to try to not beat myself up too much along the way, because it can be very easy to be like, you suck at everything right now. So really just figuring it out is kind of the next fun part.
Well, I'm happy to tell you that you don't suck at anything that you're doing. And we all need reminders of that, as crazy as it seems, because you're absolutely crushing.
Thank you.
This has been a pleasure, man. And I look forward to continuing to get to know you better as two 47-year-old white dudes that have tattoos and beards and enjoy a lot of the same shit.
Yeah, totally.
So excited for people to listen to this as well.
Thank you for having me on. What a treat.
Thank you, man. Really appreciate it.
You got it.
I just wanna have peace. Pay for the bill, let them take my card, never see the receipt. Good health, we proud, but everybody around prosperity. I just wanna have peace.